Shakespeare is arguably the most influential writer in history, yet so little is known about him. What we do know shows Shakespeare as a successful man whose legacy lived on for centuries. Most scholars agree Shakespeare wrote 37 plays or more, plus lost material. Shakespeare invented somewhere around 1,700 words in the course of his lifetime. He lived in a time of discovery, but it was also a time of blood. Shakespeare was born to John and Mary and was christened in Holy Trinity Church of Stratford, England on April 26, 1564. Shakespeare was the third of 8 children, but his 2 older sisters died in infancy, leaving Shakespeare the eldest of 4 boys and 2 girls. At the age of 18, he married Anne Hathaway. Nope, not her. Yes, that's better. In the year of 1582. 6 months later, they had their first daughter, Susanna. Almost 2 years later, they had 2 twins, Judith and Hamnet, completing the Shakespeare family. Nothing more is heard of him until Henry VI Part 1 is put on at the Rose Theatre in London in 1592. For the next 4 years of Shakespeare's life, he wrote poetry and plays and acted with the Lord Chamberlain's men. In 1596, his son Hamnet dies. That same year, Shakespeare gets in trouble with the law. In 1597, Shakespeare buys property in Stratford, which indicates he was getting a decent paycheck, but is reported for not paying his taxes and gets in trouble for hoarding food. In 1598, the first play is published under Shakespeare's name, Love's Labour's Lost. Later that year, because the landlord was raising his rent, theatre parts are dismantled and carried to London to make the Globe Theatre in 1599. At that time, Shakespeare owned 1/10 of the Globe, which is probably the best financial decision he made. In 1600, Henry IV is performed at court. In 1601, his father, John Shakespeare, dies. That year, the Lord Chamberlain's men accept a bribe from the Earl of Essex to perform Richard II in the light of the Earl's plan to overthrow Queen Elizabeth. The Earl, however, is discovered for his crimes and beheaded for treason. Twelfth Night is performed in 1602, and Shakespeare buys more land in Stratford. James I ascends the throne of England in 1603, and Shakespeare's company is renamed the King's Men. This is a huge deal, basically shouting to all of London saying that they are the most important and the King's favorite. At court, Henry V and Merchant of Venice are performed in 1605. Shakespeare's brother Edmund dies in 1607, but his daughter Susanna marries John Hall that year. In 1608, Shakespeare's granddaughter Elizabeth is born, but sadly, his mother dies. In 1612, his brother Gilbert dies, and then his other brother Richard the next year. In 1613, the Globe Theatre is burned down from a theatre cannon mishap, but thankfully it is rebuilt the next year. Shakespeare wrote and rewrote his will, and then died at 52 on April 23, 1616. In 1623, the first major collection of Shakespeare's plays is published. The big question is, why does this matter? Couldn't I just read other stuff and be done? First of all, how dare you? And second, well, no. Shakespeare has influenced today's culture in ways that we aren't even aware of. If you've ever used the words hint, leapfrog, lonely, excellent, gloomy, elbow, blanket, or even bedroom, you're using words that he invented. Not only did he invent a good portion of English that we still speak today, but we are also being constantly touched by his stories. He helped to start new ideas hundreds of years later. Paul Robinson's 1943 performance as Othello was an influential moment in Black history. Without Shakespeare, some book titles would cease to exist, such as Brave New World, Infinite Jest, and The Sound and the Fury. That's just the tip of the iceberg. Shakespeare's stories have survived for hundreds of years and will live on to be some of the greatest stories ever told.